Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of BeBelle podcast. Thank you for joining me, and I'm so excited to introduce this week's guest. I do want to give you a little bit of a warning, as we will be talking about some sensitive subjects. This woman is an absolute legend. I met her recently through, I suppose, our own tragedies and traumas. And so I'm really excited to introduce you today to not only the amazing, but also the pride of Cork for 2021, Miss Nicole Ryan. One thing I've noticed about women when they start business is they can be pretty bold. But when it comes to spending money, they just want it to be quick and easy. You only need one business account for your finances, and that's where Revolut Business comes in. Keep everything calm and tidy so you don't have to overthink every tap and transaction you make. You can sort your team out with virtual cards, you can set limits and automate your accounting by integrating your software. That way, you're not dealing with any mystery charges, you're not searching for receipts or digging through emails. You've got real-time notifications, tidy budgets, and way less admin. And guys, loads of people are doing this already. Over 20,000 people sign up monthly to Revolut Business and have full control of their spending. But the best bit is, you can too. BeBelle listeners get €200 welcome bonus if you sign up at www.revolut.com/rb/BeBelle. So if you're building something amazing, which I know you are, then you want to control your finances from day one. And so Revolut can help you with that. The offer is valid to all new business customers in Ireland. Sign up before September the 30th, 2025 and add money to your account to get your bonus. T's and C's apply. Nicole, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. I actually feel kind of honoured because I know we've met before, for a coffee, but when I was doing a little bit of research, I didn't realise you were the pride of Cork as well.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I feel kind of honoured because although I'm not a Corkonian, my friends do say if you cut me open, it would say Cork inside me, like a stick of rock, because I'm very proud of this city. So I'm super honoured to be sat talking to a pride of Cork. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Fabulous. No, honestly, I absolutely love it. So look, BeBelle is all about the stories behind the people. Mm-hmm. And, I know where you're at today, but I'd love to know how you got there. So where did it all begin?
Yeah, I guess I'm only 32 years old, but I feel like I've lived many lifetimes in that 32 years. So I'm from Mill Street. Now, I was born in the Ukraine, so my mother's Ukrainian, my father is Portuguese. But my mother's a single mother for a long, long time. And we moved to Ireland when I was quite small. So then we moved to Mill Street. Mum kind of settled in. And I suppose back then we were like probably the only Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
In a small rural village. So I started school and my brother was still small.
And does she ever tell you about why Mill Street?
No, I was just...
No. Was it any river dance, maybe?
Maybe.
The only two things I know in Mill Street are obviously the history of river dance and the toy soldier.
That's not a Mill Street, no.
That's kind of go past there, don't you?
Ballinvorney kind of.
Yes.
Ballingear.
I always remember seeing Mill Street on the right and then the soldier on the left. So, God, yeah, you would have been, I would say, like, one of the, it's different, isn't it, in a small rural town?
Yeah, absolutely. But equally, my mother threw herself into the community. She loves Mill Street, and we've grown up there. Me and my sibling, my brother Alex. So I loved school. But I guess we didn't have the most easiest upbringing.
Okay.
We would have had domestic abuse in our early years. Like my mother would have been the victim of the domestic violence, from the ages of when I was 4 to 7. And it wasn't my father, he was out of the picture, but it would have been her mother's partner at the time.
Yeah, and that's such a crucial age for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the development ages. So did you and Alec, would you be together? Did you support each other through that, or?
Yeah, I guess because my brother was so small at the time, I would have been very aware of what was happening. But as my brother grew up, he also was very aware, He's so small and he's like a sponge. So a lot of the time I'd be his second mother. I was always Alex's second mom. And like a lot of the time Alex would nearly take my word more so the mom's word over something. So I would have shielded him from a lot of it. Now, neither of us were ever physically hurt, but like we would have suffered the psychological abuse of being in that environment for the years that we were in it. So after that, my mother got out, and, it was great for us because, we were finally able to sort of relax. I suppose when you're living in a home like that, you learn to, especially as a young child, to be very distrusting of people and very, I suppose, not callous, but this callousness would have followed me through my teenage years into my early adulthood, and it would shape how I was with people and all of that. And I'll get into that, I guess. So, loved school. For me at the time, it was obviously a breakaway from the chaos of home. But I was very academic, and because my mother was, she was a very young mother. She had me when she was 19, so there's only 19 years of a difference between us. There was a lot of pressure on me to become really, the one to go to college, the one to, I suppose, propel the family in a way.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Because 19 probably then felt like such a big gap. But we know now in our 30s and 50s that it's a small gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it felt massive.
And did you feel that pressure? Did you feel like you're the one that's going to do this?
Yes. From a very young age, I suppose, because one of the real threats living up in that home was the threat to my mother's life. And my mother would say, if anything happens to me, you'll have to take care of him. Like, it'll be the two of you.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that sense of it's me and him against the world forever.
Wow.
So then I suppose I did want to excel, but that part of me, or that excelling, was also a masking.
Yeah. And was it all academics for you though? But like where was the fun as a child? Did you like sports? Did you like playing in the streets? Like, where was the fun bit?
There was fun. We'd play in playgrounds, and we would go to the local playground. Myself and my brother, we'd spend the whole day there, and then we'd come down for dinner and then go back out to the playground and come home in the evening. There were all those moments, but for me, they were far and few in between because I wasn't able to be a child as I wanted to be a child. Even in the playground, there's always danger, Even if it feels safe, it's never safe. So I suppose that's what I was grappling with. And for me, academia was something that I could excel at. Now, I did normal teenage things as well, like, boys and,
Was it mixed school you went to? Or?
Yeah, it's mixed school.
I loved going to a mixed school. I think it really rounded me. Like, I've told this story before, but we used to have boyfriends would be from the boys' school because they were really posh and they opened doors for us. But all of our mates were boys and they kind of understood us better. I liked the idea of that.
Yeah, it definitely, I think there's benefits for an all same-sex school and also a mixed school. But for me, I really liked it and I enjoyed it. But as a teenager, I found it very difficult to be me, like to be seen. So I thought that, if I excel at this, I could be good at this, and then nobody would see what I actually felt like on the inside.
Isn't that mad?
And it worked for the period of time that it did work, because I spent my whole life, I think, when you're especially if you're a victim, but also as the family of the children, you learn to grow in this environment where the perpetrator, I always say, never carries the shame passes on to everybody in that household. So for me, one of the most petrifying things was to be seen for what had happened, to be seen as, I suppose, weakness. For me, I had this dysfunctional ideology of what it means to be weak and what it means to be vulnerable, and where, I just didn't want that, because I had seen what my mother's very kind and my brother's very kind as well. So they're very two peas in a pod, whereas I'm very distrusting, and there's always hold on a second, let me get to know you before I...
But you're protecting them, I presume.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they go to their first switch first.
Yeah.
Yes.
So having that was really difficult, because... So then I thought, if I can compensate in other ways, then I would feel something.
Okay.
But... again, all these things, you learn these coping skills and survival skills as being that young, me being 4, 5, 6, I've already learned them. So they serve a purpose until one day you find out they don't.
And would any of your friends at that young age, especially in your teenagers, I suppose, would any of your friends question that?
No, not a single person. Not a single person knew, because I was very good at what I did.
We're good, girl. You were good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, incredibly. Nobody.
So no one questioned it?
No. They just thought I was like, really intelligent.
And by people not questioning it, though, did that hurt you? Because I would have wanted people to question me.
No, I never wanted the questions, because the questions would lead to me having to answer those questions and to be seen.
Yeah.
I wanted to be seen a certain way, so therefore I would portray that to the world.
And when you close your eyes then, who were you?
Yeah, I think it was in my early 20s when that's when it kind of all came to a head, but equally that's the kind of version of myself that I suppose all my versions of me through the years, they're sad. They're really sad. They're of a sad, lonely girl, a sad, lonely woman, a sad, lonely teenager. And it was, that's
And
me.
I speak about this all the time. And I know we spoke about it when we previously met for coffee about loneliness, because people see you with your partner and they think, oh, look at her. She's got a lovely partner. She's not lonely. Oh, look at her. She's surrounded by people. She's not lonely. But lonely is a really strange feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you don't have to be by yourself to be lonely.
Absolutely.
And I just think there's an epidemic of it at the moment. I really worry about myself. But what worries me, I suppose that I'm feeling it now, because you said your versions are all sad and lonely. And at what point did you feel any freedom?
Probably not till my late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I finally went to therapy properly. I can't imagine, I can try and imagine what I'd be if I hadn't. It would be just even callous, even more callous or cold. That's how people would describe me. And it's not that I wanted to be that way. It's not what I tried.
You're protecting yourself
to do, but it's the way it would always come across,
Yeah.
You're either very strong or, you're blunt, you take no shit, you can read through, because I can,
Yes.
But actually, and then when people would get to know me, when I'd let people in, certain people, of course, they'd be like, God, you're so different to what I thought I was. It's like I go back to being a child.
Yeah.
With the right people, that I can just be young again.
And do you know what? Yesterday I had a problem with my email, not my email, my website. And we took it back 6 days before an update had happened. And then we could work on it because it got blocked. And I went, God, this is like life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, sometimes we have to take ourselves back to enable ourselves to move forward.
Yeah.
And so did you feel that any relief? Because that pressure's on you to be that person and, to make a difference to the family. And you're obviously working as the protector. When you go to study then, when you finish school and you decide you want to go and study, I remember, is it marine engineer?
Yeah.
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 Why do you choose that? Because I'm always interested why people choose their subjects. And did that make you feel like you'd done what was asked of you?
Why did I choose marine engineering? I actually wanted to be a chef. And
did you?
Yeah.
Love it.
But I suppose I kind of sat down and I was like, I had the discussion with my mother and she was like, being a chef now, come on, you've more to give than to become a chef. And she was like, it's incredibly hard, long hours, you're grafting for years, it's not like you'll be Gordon Ramsay tomorrow, it's a lot of hard work. So I remember going to NMCI for an open day. Now, a friend of mine wanted to go to NMCI, so he's like, do you want to come along? My cousin is there and we'll go see it. Now, unfortunately, he ended up being colourblind. You can't be colourblind as a marine engineer, so he never got to go.
Oh, bless him.
But I saw the college and I just now I was hoodwinked, to be fair, because they show you the good parts, but they don't tell you exactly what it's going to be like, So I saw oh my God, there's firefighting, you get to work at sea. It's great money, it's great career progression. So I decided to put it down in my CEO. And that was the other thing that I put down was marine biology, which is completely different. It's the study of fish.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I didn't.
Could have helped for chefing.
Yeah. Thankfully, I got the marine engineering, but that course and that time of being in that college was it made me even harder and more, it started to make me toxic because
Okay.
I'm embroiled in a very masculine, there's very little women in that college, there's very little women at sea, and you're always trying to protect yourself. And when I went to college, I turned 17 that year. So I was just like a baby still. I look back on her and I'm like, Jesus.
Mm.
And I'm thrown into this college. I'm the only girl out of 50 lads in my class. And like it's really bizarre, but one of the first things that I knew to do is to get a boyfriend. Again, it was a way to protect myself.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, you were free game. Like that's the way it is in these masculine worlds. And so I had a boyfriend during college, just so that I could be taken seriously, like, because nobody took me seriously because I was a woman, and that was the reality of it. So I worked really hard, got my degree, and then I started working at sea, and that was again a different ballgame altogether because now I was thrown into an engine room with men, not boys that I went to college with. And in the initial stages, it was difficult because they didn't want to know about me. They didn't want to talk to me, interact with me. I was a woman, and why would you want to be an engineer? Like, I was told that my place is to mind children at home and not to be in here with them. And, God. But the other side of that is like, people might be like, well, why didn't you say it to somebody? You have to look at it. What am I going to do? I'm going to say it to somebody, and then they're going to feed into that. She's a woman, of course, she's so soft and so, weak. So I said, no, I'm not going to say anything to anybody. I'm going to keep showing up every day and doing my work. And that's what I did. And that's when they actually were like, she actually has skills. And
also, I'd say they're pretty scared of you, I'd say as well. Because I'm like, she's fierce.
But I had to build on new skills being in that college, being in that masculine, and marine engineering or any merchant shipping kind of sea life is toxic in its own way. Like a lot of the men don't talk about their feelings. You just get on with it. You do your work, and then you go drinking because you're a sailor or whatever, and then you go back and you do your work, and that's the way it is. Nobody talks about mental health. Nobody talks about how hard it is to be isolated on a ship from weeks.
And that is a problem when too many men are together.
Yeah.
That's why you need a mix. That's why it doesn't work without all of us. That's why, those situations are tough, I think, for men.
Absolutely. It is. It was horrible. And you could see it in some of the men, they were really struggling and it was hard. And then who are they going to talk to?
Yeah.
There's not a whole pile of help. And I'm hoping it has changed over the last couple of years down there. But there still has to be a lot more done for those men because we had lost men through the years to suicide.
Yeah.
Because of the hardness of it.
Yeah. Too many people, when you're seeing only the same thing all the time, too many people not talking, too many people not being open. You only know one thing, don't you? You only do what you see. And then it's almost like you're trapped, isn't it?
Yeah. And just the life out there.
Yeah.
It's so different and it's so bizarre in some certain ways.
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to marry someone that was on the rigs, actually, because I was like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Sounds great for me. But a really good friend of ours did work at sea, and it is very difficult, very strange life. It's not something you can do for a long period of time. And so for you, as you obviously you're there, you're proving yourself. At what point do you go, this is for me, this isn't for me? What are your next steps?
I guess as I was there, I was still questioning whether this was for me because I love routine. So it suited me down to the ground. But then I started thinking, in the future, like, is there, like, it's going to be hard to start a family because, very little number of men are going to want to be with you as you're away the whole time.
Yes.
Like, who's going to raise a child? You have to make a decision here. Do you want to excel in your career or do you want to try and have a family? Because
a huge decision that women are dealing with.
It's hard to do both, especially that type of job.
Yes.
Now, sometimes women, like I've heard women say to me, you can't have it all in certain things, but I suppose I'll get to that later in life, that having it all means different things to different people. But that's when I started questioning it. But I guess for me, it all came to a head when my brother ended up in hospital, and then I had to come home. And
so how old were you then?
I was just turning 23. I would have been turning 23 that March, and Alex went into hospital in January, and he just turned 18 that November.
Okay.
So I had,
And he had gone into hospital because?
he took a substance at a house party and then had an overdose. He had a reaction and was brought into CUH. So I was on shore leave a week prior to this happening. So on my last night, I actually met him here in the city and I walked him to McCurtain Street, just to Merchants Quay shopping centre, the crossing there. And Alex had grown so much in that 8 weeks that I was at sea, you know. He's always my little brother. My brother's huge. He's 6'7". He's massive, you know, really big guy, scary looking, but, you know, a soft child, really. And then a week followed. I went back to sea the following day. And then a week later, I'm at sea. And thankfully, we actually pulled into Rosslare Port. So we were in Ireland and got a call from my mother to say that Alex is in CUH. Now, for me, this is my worst case scenario because, like, as I'm growing up, I'm told that it's me against him and him together forever. And I was always really worried that something would happen and I wasn't around to see or be there to help. And then here it was. And it was the beginning of it. So then, I came home straight away, spent 4 days in CUH with him. And then he was pronounced brain dead. So we then turned off his life support. Yeah.
And that's how I've been through that process. There's nothing, I mean, it's peaceful, but it feels like an eternity. Mm-hmm. And it's a long time saying goodbye, isn't it?
Absolutely. But I'm glad I had that time with him. And the first feeling when we turned that machine off was relief. That's the first feeling I felt. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anything but relief because he was no longer suffering and we didn't have to witness it any longer, you know. And then that's when my whole life fell apart. Everything that I thought I was, who I was, my sense of self came really crumbling down around me. And I had to start to rebuild. And that was a journey.
Who did you lean on? Who was there for you?
Nobody at the time.
Okay.
I was there for me. And that's the way it's always been, you know. And I was there for me. Now I had friends and stuff, but, you know, but equally I didn't want to let people in, per se. You know, I was like, look, bad things happen in the world. You've been through this, you've been through that. You can become, you know, you can be through this. But unfortunately, because this story became so public, and then I only had one coping mechanism at that stage of my life, which was alcohol. And I remember sitting in the Rising Suns and everybody was talking about Alex.
Okay.
And like I'm sitting there by myself having a drink. And I remember these two lads are just kind of beside me and they're talking about Alex. They're like, did you hear about Alex Ryan? Like he just died and stuff. And they don't know me from Adam, obviously, but I'm his sister and I'm hearing them. And like the rage I felt because I just wanted to protect him. He was mine, he was ours. And I didn't want everybody to know and to be talking about him because while sometimes we read stories and we think, you know, this is out there, you know, that's sad, it happens to somebody else. But when it happens to you, that's your whole life. And then when it becomes so public and on show, it's really hard. So I had to make a decision because like I drank in the first week and it was great because I forgot everything. But all of a sudden, I started to unravel and I did not understand what was happening to me. And I came to a crossroads where I could go back to sea. And I swear that was such a lovely idea to go back and forget about it and just sail away and live my life and not have to deal with it. But equally, my mother's youngest child is now gone and I'm the only child that she has left.
Yes.
To leave her alone, I couldn't bear that, so I stayed.
But you took that tragedy and you became an amazing advocate. And, you know, I think you got people thinking. And I think that's so important. You know, grief is such a weird thing. And it stays with you forever. Mm. People always say the stages of grief, but they all come back to hit you at some point. And I think to be able to take grief and to use it to help others is a gift because not everybody can do that.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But at the time, I had nothing left to lose. I'd lost everything. There was nothing else that I could possibly lose, only a bit of face, potentially. So I kind of had to get out of my own way and just give this a try, because Alex wasn't a statistic. He was a person. He had hopes, he had dreams, he was young. He had impacted people's lives. And I didn't want him to be remembered for what he had done. I wanted him to be remembered for who he was.
Yes.
And he had a very important story to tell, but he couldn't tell it anymore. So I decided to tell it for him.
And it was, I think it was magical what you did. And to be able to tell somebody else's story can only come from someone that knows them so well.
Mm.
So there wasn't really anybody else that could have done it.
Yeah, I guess, no.
You know? But obviously the pressure's on as well to be a certain way and to present yourself in a certain way. And that's why, I think at that age, when we were talking 10 minutes ago, you say it was probably not till my 30s that I feel a bit more freedom in myself. Mm-hmm. What did you want to, I know you wanted to tell Alex's story, but what changes did you want to see happen?
I wanted to save lives.
Yeah.
Because nothing changed in terms of drug education. When I went to school, I had very poor drug education. My brother had very poor drug education. And I was hoping in the initial stages that something would change. I'd be like, this is massive, this is a massive story. This has to be a wake-up call. And nothing was happening. And as cliche as this is, like, you have to sometimes be that change, because you can't just sometimes sit around waiting for something else or somebody else to do it. So what I wanted young people to know at the time, and it's still the ethos today, is that your choice is your choice, but remember, your choice has consequences, good and bad. Ultimately, you will decide what you will do. Nothing I say and nothing, anybody's parents or whoever will say will change your mind in that moment. But just remember, Alex, when you make that decision, because I don't know what happened that night and I never will know the full facts, but I know that my brother was terrified, and I know how sorry he would have been knowing what was happening to him and how he would regret it and just be so upset that he did it, and he would have thought of us in the end.
No, it is scary, and that's I love the way that you say you can't change what people do, but you can make them think, and it's that last thought before you make a choice that can make such a serious difference. And do you feel that the education is better now, or is there more work to be done?
It's improved slightly, but there's a vacuum there.
Yeah.
And it cannot be up to the teachers. They cannot do everything. It's not within their skill set even. Drugs are forever evolving. There's something new every single day.
Absolutely.
And just knowing from school days, I don't want my teacher who's teaching me maths to talk about sex and drugs to me as well. That's just, for young people, it's just awkward. And I guess just more awareness, because people are going to do what people are going to do.
Yeah. I agree. And I think there's balance both sides. I went to school in the UK and we did have that education in the schools. Do you know what I mean? So our teachers, I can, when I think of people that made an impact on my life, two of those would be teachers. Mm-hmm. And we did have full sex education with them, and we did have full drugs with them. Everything was with them. And sometimes I'd go home to my mum, and it was the late 80s, and I'd say, "Oh, we learned this today, mum." And my mum would say, "Oh, God, well, your father taught me that." Do you know what I mean? Like, because they hadn't had it before them, and now I've got nieces, and they're like, they're going into their teenage years, and I'm like, what are they learning at school? I'm fascinated to know. But I also want to know, yes, they're looking, that they're looked after and everything. But I want to see how much information. And I'm quite lucky. We're quite a liberal family. Yeah. So we'd have conversations around the table too. And I hope as a society now, we're a little bit more liberal and a little bit more open.
I hope so too. It's not just a school response. It's
absolutely. It has to happen.
Community.
Dinner.
Yeah, it has to happen. But I think for so many decades and years, the shame of sex in Ireland and drugs comes with, to talk about anything openly. It's really been passed down intergenerationally for so long. Like, I even find myself, like, my mom be watching something and I'm like a 32-year-old woman and like a sex scene will come on and I just, like, mom be like searching for the remote and I'm like, we're adults.
Yes.
But it's that because we've never talked about it so openly, for whatever reason, that little shame just sweeps right in between us.
Yeah. And actually, and it needs to be talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Now, because like a 12-year-old now is like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old when I was hanging around. You know, they just know so much more because they've access to so much more. So much more. It's scary. Like, it frightens me on a daily basis. But yeah, it is. So for me, I suppose making that change, and you're so right. You know, it has to happen at home. It has to happen in school. It just has to be an open conversation, I think. And it isn't about, ticking boxes. Let's make sure they know about this tonight and that tonight. It's just open conversations so that when they do come across something, they feel confident to ask the question.
Exactly.
Whoever that might be from.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not the parent, it might be the person that they feel safe with, you know, at school or wherever. But I think, you know, to keep those conversations going is important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Especially in teenage years, you know, like they have so much access and not all the information is credible, and it's hard sometimes to decipher what's true and what's not.
Yes.
Especially with all the things that people are seeing nowadays. It's, you know, sometimes people think that it's on the internet, it's face value without even checking, which is quite scary.
Yeah.
So it is about having those conversations with that trusted adult, especially for younger people. And sometimes that can't be a parent for whatever reason, but it may be an older sibling or a cousin or an aunt or just someone older. Because I remember growing up, I would have had, mom would have had friends that were like, to me, they were like really cool. And I would have like looked up to them. And so they would have been a trusted adult where I knew they wouldn't tell my mother, but I could still go to them and feel confident to ask a question that, you know, I wouldn't ask anywhere else. Yeah.
I mean, I had cousins, my nieces now have 4 aunts, there's 5 of us, so they've 4 aunties, do you know what I mean? I get a lot of the questions because I'm obviously the cool auntie. I'll keep telling myself that. But yeah, no, I think it's just keeping the conversations rolling is so important. So for you, like, you're keeping that moving.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for you? What do you want?
So at that point, I started the workshops. I was doing the schools. I wanted to go a step further and I wanted to learn about addiction and how that worked. So I went back to college and I went back to UCC. Well, not back. It was my first time in UCC. I was in NMCI first. And I actually remember I started off doing workshops the September after my brother had passed that January. And one of the first schools I went to was a third year class. It was an all boys school. And I remember I spoke for the first time. Now, you can imagine somebody that has hidden themselves all their lives now standing in this limelight. But equally, I think what serves me really well in doing the workshops is that I can put on this persona and this mask and just be, because I've been doing it all my life. So there's another person to morph into. And I remember telling this first workshop, telling the first story. And I remember after an hour, the boys, they were emotional. And I just thought, what is going on? So I went back to UCC, started studying addiction and learning it. Because one of the things that's important to me is academia. And I didn't want someone turning around to me and saying, you have no idea what you're talking about. So I said, no, I'm going to go in and learn more. And even open my own eyes and my own bias towards all of this kind of stuff. And I remember one day I was walking to class through, the big UCC Hogwarts gates. And on that day, I remember thinking, I'm giving up Alex's adventure. I'm done with it. It was incredibly hard to start a business from absolutely nothing. I had no business acumen. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. And I just thought I wasn't sure if I was making an impact in anybody's life. And that was the key for me. That was the mission. Am I making an impact in a young person's life today? Or at any point that I've been doing these workshops? So as I was walking into class, there's this young guy that was walking beside me. And he was really young, like he was the bare 18, I'd say, And we're kind of walking at the same speed. And it's real awkward and it's really weird or whatever. So I was like, okay, will I run? And then I'd have to run all the way to class and I wasn't doing that. So we're kind of looking at each other and we start chatting, and he's like chatting to me. I'd say he was chancing his arm, but I'm like 24, 25 at this stage.
Okay.
He's like really young.
Just looking for the older woman.
Look, I'm entertaining it. It's nice to be wanted at any point.
Get it all the time, girl. Get it all the time.
And he turned to me that day and he says, what do you do for work? And I just said, I just work in the drug space, because I was done. I wasn't going to ever do another workshop again. And he turned to me and he goes, that's actually really cool. And he goes, there's this one time this girl came into my school and she told me about a story about her brother, about how he took a drug and he died. And he said to me, he's like, I still think about that all the time. And I swear to God, I was like, I was having an out of body experience. I was like, there's no way this man is talking about me to me. And he obviously doesn't know who I am, So like he finishes and I goes, guess what? And he's like, what? And I was like, I'm that girl. I was at your school. And like we both erupted, we started hugging, and in that pivotal moment when I was giving up, that one person came back to me. And so I continued Alex's adventure. So I studied, went to the Ignite Business Incubator, met Eamon, who's a fantastic man. I have such a great time for Eamon. And then decided to make Alex's adventure a business. And that was even a thing that I had to grapple with. Do I make it a social enterprise, non-for-profit, limited company?
Oh, girl, tell me about it. It's a hard one, isn't it? And people don't understand how difficult that is.
Absolutely. In the end, I went with a limited.
Yeah. And actually, we should explain just quickly, just for people that don't know. So a social enterprise is still a business, like a limited business, but it's not held by shareholders.
It can and can be.
Well, it can and
yeah. This is where it gets difficult.
But so I run a social enterprise and I really grapple with it all the time because I run it as a non-profit, but it's not a registered charity.
Yeah.
And only for one reason only. The paperwork is a bloody nightmare. Never going to do it. However, actually, did it ever need to be a social enterprise? The answer is probably not. Doesn't make any difference because you can run any business as a
social enterprise or as a business.
Absolutely. So I don't really get it. And what I found with the social enterprise space as well is I went to this massive conference for social enterprises and I actually didn't like it. Half of the room was social enterprises that had been set up and it was all people looking and begging for money and grants. And the other half of the room was full of people that were praying on those people once they got their grants to take the money off them. I find it very uncomfortable space.
It's a very difficult space. And
if you're listening, Social Enterprise Island, then please listen because it's an uncomfortable space. And as a businesswoman for 30 years, I'd love to come and sort it out.
There we go.
I would.
And because before I went into Ignite, I was like, non-for-profit is the only way to go.
Yeah.
That was my mentality. And
absolutely.
That was the mentality that I'm told the whole way through, that it'll be easy, you'll be fine. And then Eamon challenged that. And I started to look up my, I suppose, business as said that, a business.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with making money and making impact. Every business that ever existed makes money and impact, whether good or bad, whatever it is.
But I felt immense guilt.
Yeah.
Immense guilt. What would people think if I made some money and I'm doing good? And I'm like, but that's what people grapple with in social enterprise space. Yeah.
I grappled with it and then I said, if I can't make the money, I can't make the impact.
You
can't. You've got to be sorry for.
Absolutely. And do you know what, girl? I am so with you, but that's taken me 5 years. And it actually still makes me feel a little sick in the lower part of my belly.
It's hard. And I got a lot of stick for it, for choosing the limited company route.
It was the right route.
And I just said, if I can't make it on my own like this, I'm not going begging for grants. I'm not competing with every other social enterprise and charity and non-for-profit and voluntary group for the same measly bit of money.
Yeah.
I'm doing it my way or I'm not doing it at all. So now I have to force myself to really become that business person. So I did that. And then I graduate. No, I didn't graduate. Yeah, I took a gap year when I went to Ignite. Now, in that time, I then began therapy because I didn't think I was going to do just maybe the first year of addiction, and I didn't want to become an addiction counselor.
Okay.
But one of the criteria is that you have to have 50 hours of personal therapy to continue on. So I said, look, I'm here now. I might as well just do the therapy. And initially, I was only there for box ticking exercises. I wasn't there for anything else. But as I started to go through it and, met my therapist and he's very intellectual and I'm very intellectual. So for me, a lot of the time it was almost like a game. And I'm like, can he guess?
Okay.
Can he figure me out? Like, let's see how good you are.
You're a bit tricky, you are.
Yeah. It was like a game. But then, like, you know, and I stayed for years after. And it's hard. Yeah. I gelled with him and I would take breaks as well. Because I know sometimes people might think that like therapy is for like every single week. Like I'd take stints. Like I'd take 6 months and be like, look, I need a break and I'll come back then again, you know, and it'll be something new. But I really enjoyed learning about myself because I then started to understand why I was the way I was and how do I change it. One of the things that he's no longer my therapist. He sadly retired. And one of the things that I always think about in any situation or any conflict or anything that's happening, he always told me, like, you know, what role did you play in that? Because you were always a willing participant of any situation. And and every day I question myself. I'm like, okay, you got mad there, but what role did you play? Did you allow it? Did you facilitate it? Where are you in this scenario? Because sometimes it's easy to be like, that person, it's that person's fault. They did everything. I did nothing. No, I have a totally different outlook.
So easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Just me of an evening with my husband in the kitchen. But yeah, so easy. And you're right. Taking that time to reflect makes a massive difference because we have such a big part to play. And if we can make a difference in that part, actually, because it's like that thing, isn't it? You can't choose how people treat you, but you can choose how you react.
Exactly.
Exactly the same.
And that took me a lot. Like, and there's accountability in that as well. 'Cause I have to be accountable for myself. Of course, bad things happen to me, but it's how am I accountable in that situation for things? And it made me better. It made me a better person. It made me...
And do you know, when you talk about it, you look better.
Yeah.
But you do, because your eyes are now, you know, they're shining. Your mouth is turned out, like, because it's making you feel it.
Yeah.
And it's so important.
Absolutely. And yeah, it was just the emotional is the hardest thing for me, you know, because up until that point, I only felt it's like a psychopath, but like, or sociopath. And I used to always think that I'm like, is there something wrong with me because I can't feel this or I can't feel that? Love was something that I really struggled to feel.
Okay.
I could act like I love somebody or I could pretend like say it. But did I ever feel it? I'd never. Anger is another thing that I've never actually been angry. Like if I'm really mad and I'm really quiet, that you fucked up. Like but I'm never going to raise my voice.
Okay.
And that's even worse for a long time.
I grew up in a pub and my dad would say, and I ran pubs and my dad always told me, don't ever worry about the person that says they're going to come back and get you. Worry about the person that looks at you and leaves. You are that person.
I am that. I was that. Yeah.
And it's still right.
It's still in me sometimes, you know, because you're always evolving. You're always growing. But there's always that bit of yourself that is still there, you know. You're never going to get rid of it because it still serves a purpose. But for me, when I started therapy, I had forgotten who I was. Now that person was now me. It was like Jekyll and Hyde, you know. There was the real internal me and then Jekyll who was taken over at this point, and I didn't know how to separate the two.
Okay.
And I had to learn how to begin to separate the two. And it's a forever thing. Like, forever.
And by doing that and working on yourself, did that open you up then to, is that how you met somebody? Like, is that?
Yeah.
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 It normally is.
And yeah, because I would have had gone on dates and stuff, but I've only ever had like 3 proper boyfriends before I met my fiancé Phelim. And the first guy, lovely, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous guy. But I felt that, and I was only 16 when I started seeing him and 17 when we broke up. I felt that I was not too good for him. I was too bad for him. Okay. That I would do something to jeopardize this and he deserved better than me. So I ended that. Then I started seeing another guy and it was the same. He was too good for me. Like, as in, I knew he was a good person. I knew I didn't want to hurt him, but I knew inevitably in my ways or whatever I would do it and I would hurt him. Then it wasn't until I met the third guy who was way worse than me. Okay. That was a learning curve in its own right because while I knew physical abuse, I didn't understand emotional abuse. And I was in a very emotionally abusive relationship to the point where like I would be with my therapist years later and he'd be like, you're still making excuses. Like, do you hear yourself? And I'd be like, and it took me years to be like, actually, I actually hear what I'm saying. I'm making excuses. I'm excusing this behavior, not thinking that it's abuse.
Yeah.
And then that opened everything.
And they slap that out of you. but isn't it freeing? Like I always say, I coach a lot of people and I send a lot of people to therapy because I say, hang on a minute now, I'm a coach, not a therapist. And the difference in people when they come back to me after spending some time working on themselves took me years to realize that I needed it. I think everybody needs it.
I think everybody should be in therapy, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard sometimes to hear the truth or see or realize the truth. And what do you do with that then? Like, yes, I am also the villain here. I did things that I'm not proud of. And how do I reconcile that with myself? And how do I forgive myself? For me, I have to forgive myself, at 7, at 8, 12. And it's going back to that version of me because I'm still inside there, and it's going back and revisiting and being like, look, I'm really sorry that. And sometimes that's all they need to hear is sorry. I'm sorry that happened to you because nobody ever said sorry to that little girl.
Yeah.
You have to be your own savior sometimes.
Yeah. 100%. And it's a tough one.
It is.
But doing that work, then you opened yourself up.
Yeah, to feeling love and feeling different emotions for the first time in my life, and also trying to understand how to just be.
Oh, I want to take you dancing.
Something I haven't done in ages. Just to be. And I still struggle with it. Some people, do meditate. I could never meditate for love nor money. My head is too busy. I can't be still in a way, but I can be mindful as I'm doing things. And that's just my way of doing that. It works for some people, it doesn't work for everybody.
Yes.
I still have a long journey. This isn't over. There's still...
You're only 32. You got loads.
Still so many parts of me. And that's when I kind of met Phelan. But it took me a while because I was single for about 4.5 years and I was living here in the city, living the dream as like a mid-20s woman. And I started going on dates and I usually would have a type, and then I started doing the work and I was like, try going outside of your type. It's clearly your type is not serving you in any shape or form. So actually going out and enjoying and being unapologetic about going on dates and stuff. Sometimes, women are like, oh God, I go on dates. People, what would people think? Who cares what people think? You could die tomorrow.
Go for it.
Yeah. And that actually led me to take things that I did not want. So then I got really honed in on what I did want. And that's what I failed him. And it was like a random thing that I didn't think would go anywhere because he was living in Boston at the time and I was here. And for me, long distance, like if you went back to 20-year-old Nicole and were like, would you do long distance? I'd be like, hell no. Even then I was like, I don't know how this would work. But then I said, just give it a go. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen for you? And now we're engaged and we get married next year.
Amazing. I'm delighted. Yeah, Boston's rubbish anyway. Why don't you stay in Boston?
And he's the opposite to me, you see, because I'm vocal and loud and sometimes I can be very fiery and very
yes,
and he's very timid and quiet and I'm not afraid to say no, and I need that because I don't need a yes man. I get bored of that. I don't need you to continue to agree with me all the time because you're probably scared of me. I need you to, when I need to be checked, you need to check me.
100, and I know when we met for coffee, we discussed this because my husband's the same. But I can't make my husband do anything. And if he doesn't want to, and the same, he would it's just a no.
Yeah.
There's no explanation. That face.
Yeah.
Like just before, didn't I said, if you don't talk about something, give me the look. I'm so used to the look, the opening of the eyes. And that just means that's the end of it.
I did. Yeah. You need that.
Yeah.
You need that.
No,
so,
it's good. And so you're still living in Mill Street?
I'm living in Ballyvorney.
Oh, Ballyvorney.
Yeah, I moved out there and that was during the pandemic. That was a really weird time. I moved back. So I was still living in the city, but I moved back with mom because, I don't know, it was just the pandemic.
Yeah.
It was easier as well. And I loved being at home. And I really kind of, I suppose, got into a routine, started working more on Alex's Venture and bits and pieces that I could do because obviously I can't do workshops. So that's all wiped.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, let's get into a routine because you lose your mind just hanging around. Got really fit, got really into walking, stopped drinking, stopped doing all my shitty behaviors and got to spend a lot more time with mom every day. And it was so lovely because we became very, very close during that time. And then moved out to Ballivorny, and that was change. And I was in a place where I didn't know anybody. And for me, it was like, it was hard because I was grappling with myself all over again. And I'm like, why do I not feel okay? What's going on? And then maybe the seasons changed and I was like, okay, I'm settling in more. I'm starting to get out because I was out of a routine. I'm like living, trying to settle into this new house. I have a new dog and like we're just together. So then that happened, and then I started working actually with Social Impact Ireland when they were running at the time.
Brilliant.
So then I started working with social enterprises, and I loved that job. I loved working with people who would be at the start of their journey. They could be in the middle, in so many ways, and just trying to help. They sadly closed up, so I lost that job, made it redundant. Started then working for a company that would have done software for people with Parkinson's. Great bosses, great company, loved that, and then was made redundant last year. They just, I suppose, had to, put the business first, and totally still friends with, the bosses and stuff. They're lovely people. But last year then I got pregnant on my birthday, and so I was made redundant, and I was kind of like, well, it's okay because, I'm going to have a baby. And then 5 days after the redundancy, I had a miscarriage, and then I was back to losing my sense of self. It was a really hard time.
And, we've spoken about this before. And so, and people will be listening to this and it's so usual because you'll know now from speaking about your experience that it happens to so many. Yeah. But you do lose a piece of yourself because part of your DNA is in that. Yeah. And I think it's a really difficult time for anybody to process because I know when we spoke before, I said, this one of the things that always got me when I was going through something, similar, was people always asked, how far gone were you? How did and, my friend, that happened to my friend. And my advice is always don't say anything.
Yeah.
Just hold my hand and be there. Yeah. So, you've got yourself to a point of happiness and you've worked on yourself, and then obviously this happens and it's something that you can't control either. Like, how did that make you feel?
When I first got pregnant, I was so uneducated about pregnancy. I hadn't a clue what entailed, what was normal, what wasn't normal. And then when I had the miscarriage, I didn't even think about miscarriage until it actually started to happen. And then when I had the miscarriage, it was really tough. I reverted back to Jekyll and, put on the face, and I was like, it's fine, it's grand, we'll be all right, get on with it. But I couldn't emotionally get on with it because now, Jekyll's here, Hyde is also here now, he's entered the room. And my own self, I was just like, I hated seeing people, I hated being out. I just kind of wanted to be in my own bubble, in my cocoon, and just not want to, speak about it. But then I told some of my closest friends, my mother obviously knew. And I didn't know my mother would have had one. And she told me then, it's kind of like the more you tell, the more women are like, yeah, it happened to me too. But it was almost like I wasn't allowed to acknowledge the loss. Like, it was, it was just shy of 12 weeks. So it was like, well, sure, you'd be great. Well, at least you can get pregnant. That's not what I need to hear. Like, it's not about that. And yeah, I kind of had a break in mid-July. And then, like, Phelan would have moved home back at that in June. And I just knew that I wasn't well, emotionally and mentally. Then I took my time, and then the opportunity of going for the election came up, and it took a while for me. Like, it took a week. I had a week. I was like, look, I'll give you my answer in a week. Will I run or will I not? And I had met people and I had chatted with them. And some people were like, I don't think you should do it. You can't have it all, is what I'm told. Okay. No, if you know me. I will prove you wrong. I can if I want. And I get that. Yeah, But one thing I find really, I suppose, frustrating, and sometimes women, like, I'm sure you'll know this, but women will know this, that why does it always have to be a choice? Like, what is my life to you? If you chose a path where you wanted to have kids and you wanted to settle down and all that, that's brilliant. Yeah. That's a lovely thing and that's your life. Why is it that I cannot focus on my career? Or why is it that, yeah, but you're 32, you know, you're 34 and like, are you going to have a kid at 40? If I do, so what? It's my choice.
Well, all I'd say is freeze your eggs. And that's all my advice to anybody is just freeze your eggs, because unfortunately we can do whatever we want and we can have whatever we want. But biologically our bodies
is ticking,
won't allow us. But I think now that the fact that we can freeze our eggs, you can have a baby at 50. Do you know what I mean? I would have frozen my eggs. I wish I had, like, do you know what I mean? But, because I do think, and it's probably sometimes I remember back in the day, you know, people say, oh, you know, maybe it's your age, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And it probably was, you know, I'm very much aware that I didn't start trying for a baby until I was 36. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's not going to be as easy as when I'm 32.
Absolutely.
But now we have all the tools. Like, I'm a huge believer anybody can have a baby these days if you want one. However that happens, even if it's surrogacy, you can have a child. And I believe that we need women like you in the right places. And I believe that you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Because without more women like you, nothing's going to change.
Absolutely. And like you said, yeah, you can have a child at any point. And
yes,
I just feel like there's such pressure for you to, as a woman, to be like, okay, so you finished your school. At what point do I enjoy my life?
Yeah.
When I'm 70 and I can barely, you know, well, I know there's loads of 70-year-olds that are really fit, but you know, you're tired then and you don't have the energy. Why am I not allowed to enjoy a couple of years before I have some life-changing decision as having a child? Because that changes everything.
Absolutely.
Absolutely everything.
And it's another conversation, because it's like, if the baby is sick, who gets the call? Is it the mum or the dad? I mean, I love that conversation, you know, because theoretically at the moment, it really 70% of the time it's the mum. And that's why people are having that conversation with you now, because that's the next conversation. And you're like, let's just leave all the conversations on the table, because actually we're in a much better state as a country, and hopefully, I mean, everywhere else in the world seems to be going mental, and I feel like we're going backwards as women. I don't feel it's so much here. But that's why, again, I'm going to say, you know, I don't care who you represent in the Senate. I just know I need you there, and I want more of you and more people like you. And as a 53-year-old woman, I will tell you, and I will stand outside those rooms, and I will be a support to any women that want to go and stand for government or the Senate, whatever they want to do. I can be a support system. I feel like I'm too old now to go in.
Not at all.
Oh, no.
You never know. If it comes, just take the opportunity.
But it's amazing, the opportunity that you took. And you know, you went through this awful piece of trauma, because it is trauma. It is bereavement. It's the second one that you felt, the second one of a close personal person. But again, now you're trying to change things in the Senate to help future women that go through miscarriage, to make things a little bit easier. Again, using your experience to try and make a difference.
And I think that's really important.
Really important.
And I'm not sure how to ever say this properly, you know, because I don't want to say like, oh, I suppose whatever is meant to happen will happen, and what's not for you won't pass you. I've, in the last, especially maybe 6 months, have really kind of started to come to terms with the loss. I mean, like, okay, but, you know, maybe it just wasn't the right time. And look what you've achieved between now and then. And maybe if you did in sliding doors in an alternate universe, you wouldn't be here. You'd be living a whole different life, a whole different type of thing. So, yeah, I just want to enjoy the time that I have now, to do what I need to do. And if it happens, it happens. I'm not, you know, ruling it out, but I guess I just stop asking me. You know, let me get on with my work.
And that goes for all women, actually. Just stop asking questions of women, like, actually, I was getting my teeth done the other day and someone said, could you be pregnant? I was like, you're having a laugh, like, but you're grand. But thank you for the compliment. But yeah, no, and I just think, you know, that's perfect. That's where you are and that's where you want to be.
yeah, I'm happy where I am right now. And like that, to use my personal experiences to actually influence policy, like that, Jesus, that's amazing. I did the pregnancy loss bill, and while it's on the back burner, I still have a lot more work and a lot to be done in between now and the year. And recently I put in an amendment around children being witnesses of domestic abuse, and that got accepted by the government. And that was the first time I stood up and shared my story of being that child in that room. And it was, like you say, freeing. For the first time in 25 years, I was able to just be seen. And I wasn't, like, I was petrified going in, not gonna lie. But after that, I was like, God, I don't have to hide anymore. Thank God, and that 7-year-old girl now, I've reconciled. We're good.
Oh, do you know what? What a beautiful way to finish this pod. You are amazing. And if this inspires anybody to try and make a change and they need support, I know that you're always, open to speaking to people. I certainly am. But we're going to finish with a little question from our previous guest for you. Now we'll get the little book. And the question is,
besides business goals, what signifies success to you? No work-related answers.
Oh.
So, what signifies success? If I can die happy.
I was going to say, yeah, happiness.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
And
but we have
hard
to work at it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. If I'm there lying there and I can look back on that flash that happens apparently. Yeah, just to be content.
Amazing. Cole, thank you so much for joining me. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Me too. Thank you.
Cheers. Hi, and thank you for joining me for this week's episode of BeBelle Podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, or feedback for us, we always love for you to get involved. And you can find us on Instagram at BeBelle_podcast. Don't forget, though, that if you want to watch these episodes, you can see them all on my YouTube channel, Sian Horn. And don't forget to follow and subscribe. The more people that follow and subscribe, the better it is for the podcast, the more that we can improve future and going forward. So, with that being said, thank you so much for following BeBelle, and I hope you enjoy these next episodes.